Ron Ogren is a dead man walking today. God brought him back to life. It's a story I will remember all of my life, and I want to bring you hope and encouragement for what God has done before, He's going to do again. Ron, what happened?
I was a foreman, and I asked to go take a spot with the guys to show them. So I went up and took someone's place up in one of the big power towers.
Like those steel big ones?
Like the steel big ones, yes, out near Denver, Colorado. And so we were moving some lines over into the right-of-way that weren't in there and were shut down, but they were causing some kind of like a brownout, or where they're rolling actually over to us the power. So when I was up there, and they rolled the power and turned it back on when I was up on the...
How can a mistake be made like that?
It's hard to say. They used to ask me, do you want to know who made the decision to turn it back on?
No.
And I was like, nope, I don't want to know that. Nobody thinks I'm going to go to work today and fry somebody.
Yeah.
So I was like, no. And so two wires arced, like in high wind where you see a big flash or whatever. That's what happened. So when it turned on, one wire hit this fingertip and one wire hit that fingertip, and it blew my linesman gloves off. And so it blew down through my gloves, and these fingers literally burnt down to where it was just charred bones. And then it went through my body, and it turned turned here and went down and blew a section of my heart off, and then went down inside and fried me until my lungs were shattered and not expanding. So I had fire inside, and there was a rivet in the bucket that was cut with a razor knife we didn't see, and so I was part of the circuit, so it just kept going through. So I was taking what was 100,000 volts. My linesman gloves are only good for 10,000 volts. And so I had 100,000 volts, like run a whole city of millions through me. And so it was just shooting. And so when I was young, I always had a dad, and I'm hollering, help me, Jesus, now I got a Heavenly Father. I had a good dad, not a perfect dad, but a good dad. So I'm saying, help me, Jesus, now. And so as I'm screaming, and I'm asking, because I know you flex, like if someone hits 120, you feel that alternating current.
Yeah.
So now this is huge, and it's throwing me all around, and it's just part of me. And so it's flowing through my body constant. I can't stop it. And I knew my heart's either going to stop or explode. So God stopped my heart, what was left, because part of it was blown off, and He stopped what was left. And then it burned so much of my safety gear off, and I was shaking so radically, I flipped out and went 40 foot down and hit the ground. Where a guy tried to catch me, and he slowed me down some, but I still hit hard enough that my feet were shattered, all my tibia bones were broken, my knees were broken, my femurs were compound fractures were sticking through my legs. My tailbone was broken, my vertebrae were shattered. I had broken all over. Everything either had a break or a crack. My neck was broken, my jaw was broken, and I just was a mess. There was nothing really left that wasn't broken. And I remember looking down, and I had like 2-foot flames still shooting out my leg. And so I told this other big guy, they went into shock.
Were you still conscious at this point?
Yeah, mostly when you fall 40 foot or get that much electricity, it knocks you right out. But I was the only Christian there, so I had to stay awake and pray. So I was like, as I was looking down, I flipped that one big guy right over me that tried to catch me. He was a big bodybuilder, but he was knocked silly over there. And then I asked this other big guy, I said, come here and hold my head. And they're screaming, what do we do? What do we do? And I said, call an ambulance. That's what you do.
Now, you told me before that your body looked like Jell-O.
Yeah, it broke so many bones. I was just like, had no structure.
Nothing.
And so nothing. So they went away and called. And when this one guy behind me was holding my head so it wouldn't move around, and they rolled 2 trucks of ambulance drivers to me, and they got out and they ran up with the gurney, and they lost color in their face. So I had a brother that taught paramedics, that he for a long time ran the children's hospital.
So you're here, they see you, they rush you to the hospital, they don't want to touch you.
They backed up. They backed up and didn't even touch me. They called for a doctor. They said, we don't know what to do with this guy. What do we do? And so they called back for the doctors. The doctors then had them do some tests. And so they did a few tests, and the doctors at the hospital said, do not put an oxygen mask on him. It'll blow up what's left of his lungs.
Wow,
So they put air casts on me and put me in a backboard, and they put an oxygen tent around me. And so my whole body was just all blown up, air casts. And so they had one for the center of me they put in. They had them all over, and so my legs and everything, and then they flew me a flight for life. But on the ground, I remember all my workers said, remember what you prayed. Because I was on the ground, and I was like, Jesus, I don't need no paperback version, Jesus. That's the one that's like Huckleberry Finn or something, some character people know, because they don't believe in the real Jesus. And I don't need you, the dead in the grave Jesus. I need you, the live Jesus that I've seen work, because I've seen miracles before that time. And I need you to come now and take away some of this pain.
So you're going in the hospital, pain all over. How much % did you have to live at that time?
When they put me on a flight for life, my boss got there then. This guy I worked for is a big-time builder guy, and he got there and they said, "How's my guy?" And they said he has the worst breath sounds they've ever measured, and he has the worst heartbeat we've ever measured at a big hospital. So they said he'll never live to the hospital.
But you did.
So either way, God's having you be cursed, even though you're down and blown up and broken up. So then he looked he said, "Just a minute," and he went over and he went in that flight for life they just loaded me into, and he says, "How are you?" And I'm thinking, how can he ask how I am, so wiped out as I am. And so they flew me to the hospital. And so at that time, I told him, call my pastor, because God had told me to go in and resign in the morning. I didn't know what's going to happen, but he told me to resign. So I went in that morning early. I met the pastor at 5.
I want to move forward because of time.
Yeah.
So here you are, you're in the hospital. I can see why God wanted you to resign. Right. There was a different plan. How long were you in that state? How many months?
I was 3.5 months at 0% chance to live. They didn't even give me 1% chance to live. They listed me at 0%.
Oh, that's encouraging.
Because they cut me open to check on me when I first got there. I gave them verbal permission because that's the only thing it worked in. But when they put the tubes in, then I wouldn't be able to talk. So they cut me open and looked inside, and they found bones from my feet up in my chest. Everything had shot like arrows all over.
Dang.
So I had internal bleeding so horrible they had to put like 5 times my blood system back into me.
Dang.
And so
now you're going through all that. I assume they put a lot of steel in you to steel you back together, basically.
They didn't at first. They just kind of hung me and put me in a partial cast and body cast, and they hung me out to dry because they were so sure I was going to die that they didn't even set any bones or anything. They didn't try anything. They just left me there to die. Till then, I remember they came in, and the more dead I was, the more alive my spirit was.
Wow.
So Jesus was right there with me. And
now,
so,
there was one point, actually, you said that a witch came in your room.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
She was torturing me at nights.
Was it a nurse? Or
it was a nurse. She worked there as a nurse. And so she would come in and torture me and go under where the cast was and poke things and make me bleed. And she would do all kinds of stuff.
How did that get caught? So
I was praying in the Spirit, because Jesus told me, pray in the Spirit to me. And I did. And a doctor came back to check on me when he wasn't supposed to and caught her. And so she was fired.
Good.
And so...
Now, for the sake of time, here you are, 3.5 months later. You are still alive. Did they do surgeries at that point?
No. They hadn't done nothing. So then they came in one day. I remember that doctor came in, and my spirit was wide awake. I could hear just like a normal hearing and everything. And so the doctor's hollering, his heart stopped. I was already in an iron lung. I couldn't breathe on my own. I had an iron lung breathing for me. And so he said, his heart stopped. Bring in the crash cart. And so I'm starting to think, isn't that where they shock people? How can more electricity help me at this point? It's like, how can that be the answer? So they rolled in the cart, and he shocked me, and it felt like someone put a hot spear in my heart and pulled it out. And all my broken parts went flying out and just cut up all my insides again because everything was in there. And it just hurt so bad. And he was saying, increase the power to full. And I'm like, don't do that, sucker, that hurts. But they couldn't hear me because I was shaking it. So he shocked me 3 times at full power, and it didn't work. And then he broke my ribs open and went in there, and he massaged the heart and shocked it for 1 hour and 45. I was laying up there, and no brain waves, nothing. So after 1 hour and 45, he tagged my toe, and they cleaned me up, and they put me in a body bag, and they rolled me to the morgue.
Did you experience all that, or you were dead?
I didn't know I was dead at that time. I felt all the blood running down me when he cut my chest all open and that, and I was thinking, wow. And then I was thinking, oh, this doesn't hurt so bad. And then they rolled me to this morgue room, and they rolled me on my gurney because they were going to do an autopsy right away. So I was on a gurney in a body bag, and a demon come for me. And this demon was really stinky and kind of like a pig pen, only a lot more foul, and he was leaving black stuff all around him. And he come for me and said, I've come for you, and there's nothing you can do.
Yes, you
and so they wanted me to deny God so he could drag me to hell right then. So he wasn't even through then. So then when I told him
So you're dead in the morgue.
Yeah.
The demon shows up.
Demon shows up and wants to grab me and take me to hell. Okay. And so I told him when I hit the ground, God spoke to me and he said, don't worry how people look at you, don't want anyone says. I'm going to take care of it and you're going to be okay from this. And my father's not a liar, so I believe
You were able to hold on to that?
I held on to that whole time and talking to him. And so then right as soon as I said, no way, I'm not going with you because the Father said I'm going to be okay. And he just, 2 giant angels stood up beside my gurney, and then they drove them off. And I realized how strong they're, big warrior angels. And they had 10-foot ceilings, and they were above the 10-foot ceilings. Then I realized I'm in a body bag, and I'm looking out at it, and these guys are in a room above me too. And they just ran off, and he said, the master said you could bring him this far and no further. And he just drove off that demon.
Wow. But you're in a morgue, and you're sitting in my studio right now.
Right.
How did you get out?
So then Jesus came to me, and after I'm sitting down there, and he said, you know, I told you it's not your time, so he just blew breath back into me. So I didn't really fully leave my body and my spirit. He left my spirit in there because he knew what he was going to do. So he blew breath back into me. Kids always ask, what did he look like? And he was a fiery God there fighting for me. So his eyes would have fire come out in his mouth. So he just went, when he blew into me, it just went right inside me, the fire of God. And when he did that, this nurse that said it'd been at least 5 hours, she got down and she come down, and she was a new Christian. Some of my friends had led her to the Lord, and she unzipped the bag to hold my hand, and one of my ribs was missing. And it was, my ribs were all starting to poke what was left in through what's left of my heart, but that guy slowed me down just enough, hit just hard enough to start the heart, and just slow enough that the ribs didn't puncture through what's left of my heart. So
was it beating at the time?
So you
Did
can
she see it?
She's seen it beat then. When Jesus blew breath back to me, you can watch my heart still to this day. My wife tell you, you can watch me when I beat, my heart goes up into there and comes down. So it's like, so she's seen that and went, oh my gosh, he's alive, get him back upstairs. And that's when they started trying to do surgeries on me.
Wow, so they brought you out of the morgue,
Yes.
back upstairs.
Yep.
I want to say this is insane, but I should be saying he's alive.
He's alive. That's
He's
right.
alive.
He's alive.
So there is more to this,
Yes,
and
a
we
lot
want to
more.
hear more of that, because this was the part that you started, the healing part, actually.
Right.
They no longer, once you're dead and you have a
Yeah.
death certificate and you're alive, they're going to have to help at
Right.
that point. So
Yeah,
with that said, if you need prayer for healing, we have 855-515-5550, or go to barbtv.org. Ron is alive right here.
Yes.
And when God does it for one, he wants to do it for another.
Yes.
Isn't that what's
That's
true, Ron?
true. Very
so God loves you, and so do we.
Are you ready to inspire and change lives? You can make a difference for a better tomorrow. God created you for more. You matter. There is an unprecedented pandemic of forgotten hearts. You can bring hope and answers. Inmates feel alone, afraid, and abandoned. Now is the time to find, to stand, to change, and transform lives. God loves them unconditionally. Adopt a Champion empowers inmates to be a champion within themselves, within their family, and in the world. There are 3 ways you can help. Become part of our team, pray, and donate. Together, we can make a difference. You can start today. Go to adoptachampion.org.
So Ron, now you're alive, you're out of the morgue.
Right.
I still don't know what the nurse was thinking to go to your body back in the morgue and to just unzip it. But now they have a dead man alive, so now they're gonna have to do something.
Right.
Right? And so how much steel went in your body
Well,
with
they-
all these broken bones?
I have a whole box of steel. They had ones like this. They literally, there's just chunks of my femur. So they had to slide it down through all the chunks and attach it from my knee to my hip. And they attached pieces like that all over. So I have a whole box of metal they took out of me later.
Wait a minute. You have a box of metal that
Yeah.
it's no longer in your body?
No, it's no longer in my body.
So what happened?
So I had to ask him later because your bones and them expand and contract different. And so when I lived in Colorado and you'd have big swing changes, 40, 50 degrees during the day sometimes, my bones would just hurt because they would fight the metal. And so
Never thought of that before.
But yeah, when they were working on me, my back was so shattered up. They took x-rays of my back, but then they felt like then I was still too sick to do surgery, so they decided to do surgery in my room. So they did 3 of the surgeries in my room. So they scrubbed my room and brought an MRI machine and x-ray machine in. The first one they did, they were going to do my back, which was just shattered up and broken all throughout. And so they took MRIs and x-rays that evening, and the next morning they were going to retake them. But people came in and prayed for me and laid hands on me, and my back was together in 2 pieces, but sticking through the spleen each way. So that freaked them out. And they had the machines calibrated, and they checked out fine. But more people had been in praying for me. So the next day, when they took a new MRI to do surgery, God had made my back together straight.
Wow.
And so they didn't do any surgery on that, but other things. And I remember the guy that my hand was just wrapped up, my fingers the whole time, and
They were burned off,
they were
right?
all burned off, yes. And so that I just had charred bones sticking out. This one had just a little bit of skin that went down and was hanging onto a fingernail, but it was just all burned and gone. And so I remember telling my pastor, I can't lead worship at church no more. I have no fingers, I can't play my guitar.
He says,
No. So he'd freaked out a while, but then he really started praying and believing, and they all started believing in our church. And so they unwrapped my hand, this surgeon, to cut it off, because my hand was considered dead. They'd done a lot of tests. The whole hand was considered dead. And so where the power had come through originally. And so when they went to cut it off, the surgeon unwrapped my fingers, and God had stuck my fingers on with full filling. I didn't feel it. I don't know when he did it. But during a week or two while I was just laying there, he stuck my fingers back on with full filling. And so they fingerprinted me because it scared them. And they said, you have the same fingerprints. I'm like, yeah, original guy put them back on. You need original parts from Jesus. That's the only place you can get them, from Father
Now,
God.
you couldn't walk at this time. 2 new fingers out of nowhere. You couldn't talk.
No, I had a trachea in my lungs. My lungs were still completely, they went back upstairs and hooked the iron lung back up to me so I could breathe. But one day it started making all this noise, and they came in and they said, he's getting way too much air. So they had to take the iron lung off. And my lungs, they have 24-hour lung deals. I don't have them, but my doctor does. And my doctor, the pulmonary doctor that did my breathing, and he has an x-ray of the day before they were going to do it, 24 hours later, and it's all just charged. My lungs are just charged and broken. And then he has a picture 24 hours later, and I have 2 new lungs that God put in there while I was sleeping.
That's only God that can do those things. He sure did things differently with you. Now, there was a point you wanted to walk again.
Yes.
And you can't. Your feet are shattered.
Now, they put me in a...
Now, you believed, when you believe for new lungs, when 2 new fingers are back, faith pours in.
Right.
Now, but my question is, wasn't there something that you believed God was going to heal you, and he healed somebody else instead?
Right.
What happened there?
Well, they took me from that hospital then, after that, and they took out the trachs, and I got to go to a famous rehab hospital, and so in Denver, Colorado, and so I'd be in there, and I could still only move one hand and turn a little bit. That's all I had at first. And so they put me in whirlpools with patients. They put us in little cranes in a whirlpool, and 3 different times they put 2 of us in there together, and you can move your hand better. So I moved my hand over and shook them in Jesus' name. And 3 different paraplegics got healed, and they're all running around going, yay. And I'm going, what about me, God? I'm in the water. It's steering, man. I want my legs to work too.
Now, they walked out?
They walked out, 100%
3 paraplegics.
3 different paraplegics in that same hospital.
You lay hands on them, Jesus heals them through you, and you're still in the same condition. That's not cool.
But it wasn't my time, and I had other people to pray for. I started when my hand worked better. I could roll room to room and pray for patients, and I could do stuff, and then one day, God let me just say, and I bugged everybody, and they let me try to walk, and I couldn't. And a week later, after I'd talked to them all, and they explained to me how I never could and why I couldn't walk and everything, I'm like, I don't care what you say. My dad's not a liar, and he told me I'm going to walk out of here. And so
you held on to what he gave you.
I held on to what God said, and then one day I told them, come on, and I bugged them all day again. About a week and a half later, and when we were rolling out there, God had told me that morning, today's the day. I'd got the day wrong, and a lot of people are mad because it doesn't happen in their time, not God's time, it's not ours. And so that day they put me in there, and they snapped crutches onto my arms like Canadians, The Canadian guy made them, so they call them Canadian crutches.
Yeah, I'm like,
And-
Canadians, what
yeah,
are you
that's
talking
why,
about?
No, that's why the crutches that snap, and they brought some of them as a joke. They snapped on me in this room full of just like mats and that, rubber mats, and they said, okay, hotshot Christian. And Jesus said, watch this. And Jesus went back into me, and fire went inside me again, and it popped all together, and I got up and walked. And they said, you better use them crutches. I don't need the crutches. I picked the crutches up and walked across the room. I went from them having to put me in the bed to walking right then.
Wow.
And I left the hospital the next morning.
The next morning, you walked out of there. What did that with the doctors?
Oh, it freaks
How
them
did
out.
it impact this
That-
entire? Because you're a walking miracle that's supposed to stay dead, right? So
The main doctor was a lady that's a Russian atheist.
wow.
And she has me go into rooms to pray for people and to watch many people be healed. She had me do my testimony. I took 2 other guys that were healed from spinal injuries, and they went with me. And that day, 3 people walked out. In 1 year, 4 people walked that had 0% chance to ever walk, just like me.
Wow.
And they walked out. And I've seen at least 100 now walk, different times.
100 people,
Paraplegics,
paraplegics walk.
they walk.
So how do you? I know Jesus does
It's
it,
Jesus.
but so he has blessed you to pray for people, and you have the faith because he's done that
I've seen
with
thousands
you.
of all kinds of healings because of that. Because he did it for me, he'll do it for others.
Wow.
He's not a respecter of people.
Right.
So when you believe, and some people always ask me, what's it take to go? You got to believe Jesus will show up for you, because the healing's in his wings. At best, we're a conduit. That's the
So
point
instead of
somebody prayed.
fighting so hard for it ourselves,
yourself,
we're
to
going to
fight.
say Jesus will show
Jesus
up.
will show up. And if you just believe Jesus will show up, he'll tell you what to say. He'll tell you what to do, and you do your part.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go see someone that's paramedic and I'm paraplegic and I pray for them. And a year later, I run into them and they're walking. They said, yeah, we just got a little better over the last year. Wow. And now we're
So it
totally
got a
healed.
little better over. Not everybody is instantly healed.
So there's 2, when you pray for healing, there's 2 words in the Bible. And it says that one is like going to a doctor, how he heals you some and gives you the right things. Yeah. Another is a miraculous healing. Wow. So it's instantaneous, where you see, like I've seen a leg grow out, a guy that has his leg shot off in Vietnam, and by machine gun, and I watched his leg grow out in about a minute.
That's pretty cool. I have a prisoner I'm working right now that is missing 2 legs, and it grew out 1.5 inches, but I want the whole shebang because it's cut right up here, you know.
When you can believe for God, he can do some stuff. We have a friend that stayed when we were up here just a while back teaching, and we stayed at your house with you. There was a girl stayed at our place to take care of our dogs and chickens and that, and she said, well, if God could do it for you, so she had really bad kidneys, and she said she went to the doctor up here just a few days ago. She just told us last night that she went to the doctor who said she had the worst kidneys in that, and
oh, God,
she said she looks like she has an 18-year-old girl's kidneys now.
Wow, that's so good.
Just got it.
So Ron, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what is your website?
Well, I've got a place that's called Dead Men's, because all the bikers, the outlaw bikers, check my story and they call me the Dead Man now.
So it's deadmenministries.com.
deadmenministries.com.
Something like that.
Yeah,
so thank you, because I think you bring hope to people, because you are this walking, resurrected body, which still was taken out, completely functioning now.
Right.
Now, you said something about your heart. Is your heart completely healed now?
My heart, it just has a peace. If they put an EKG on me, I must have a man say as a man having a massive heart attack.
Right now, this moment.
But my blood pressure's fine, and they don't know how to fix it, so they leave me alone. They studied me 3 times from doctors all over the world through University of Colorado, and I give them 1 week for 3 different years. And so they know my legs aren't connected together here where the fire blew out, and they still work like the muscles are. And my heart, they don't know how it beats. They don't know a lot of things. They're like, oh my gosh, we don't understand. In fact, my main doctor said, after your fingers, we're not even going to talk about knowing you. We're going to say we didn't even know you. And so, but most of them doctors that study me from around the world, it's easier for them to believe I'm an alien. And probably close to 80%, 75, 80% believe I'm an alien from outer space. So I've shown my Bible, I'm an alien because I believe in Jesus and I believe I'm not made for this world.
Wow,
I'm made for another world. I could prove that in the Bible to them, but they won't give God enough credit, so I don't let them study me like that anymore.
That's good. Now, somebody is supposed to be healed right now.
Amen.
It's so strong. So I just want you to know right now that God can even do it through a TV screen or a phone
Yes.
screen or anything else. But He wants to heal someone right now. And I hear a right knee, but that's just easy compared to what
Yeah.
we've heard here. So that's a bigger deal. So I'm just speaking for a brand new knee, a
Yes, Lord.
brand new knee for whoever
Yes, Lord.
that is. And that God is
Come,
growing that
Jesus.
out and you'll have it within 2 weeks.
Thank
Brand
you,
new
Lord
need.
Jesus.
Ron, do you hear anything?
I hear that too. I hear there's a lot of people going out. You need things, call out right now. Where the Spirit of God is moving, that's when you call out and grab. Call out and grab for your miracle. And don't let go. Just call out and grab for it and hold on.
Yeah.
And just keep believing. And when the enemy says, you watch me, I'm going to be walking right. You watch me. I'm going to be speaking right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go on and I'm going to tell the blessings of God.
So good. Just call it out. Even some of you needs a new ear. That
Yep.
ear is not there. Call it out.
Call it out.
Call back
Amen.
for that ear right now.
Right now.
So
It's not a big thing for God. He put it on originally, so He can do it again.
So Ron, looking back at all these years and looking through all the pain that you went through, why did God make you go through all that?
You know, I never think about.
I don't mean it as
know
it's
that,
God's fault,
But no,
you
know
know?
that some people do blame God or they say this, but I'll tell you this. When I look back at my life and I see hundreds of people healed before,
Yeah.
and I see hundreds of people getting saved, and after that, it's been 100,000s, and it's been thousands and thousands of supernatural healings. So that, I would say myself, if He got me alone, I'd say one of the best things happened in my life was Satan showed up and french fried me and slam dunked me from 40 feet to shut me up. Instead, he charged me up more for God. I get to go on more God adventures.
Ron, thank you so much for being on the show. This is just the beginning, and it's going to keep growing and growing. I'm
Amen.
excited to have the dead man alive in right here in our ministry.
Thank you,
And
Lord.
you're going to even touch more people than ever
Thank you,
before.
Lord.
So I want to just thank you so much. Wow, it's not just a story. What an incredible powerhouse we have here, right here, of what God is doing through Ron. And He wants to do it again. So if you're sick, if you're hurting, if you're struggling, don't give up. Connect with us, 855-515-5550, or go to Barb TV. God loves you, and He wants to heal you.